Hey guys, how you doing? Hope everyone's doing well, especially in this stressful and trying time. Today's video is going to be another excerpt from the Rise of Skywalker novelization. We're going to cover the scene, which is actually a very interesting scene. And it completely negates what Darth Plagueis said in the Legends novel, which I'm going to quote what he said as well. And it's Legends, so it doesn't matter in canon, but it's just interesting to kind of connect the two about what Plagueis says about someone using Force Lightning who's never actually had it done to them. The scene goes into great depths and detail on what Rey was imagining and conjuring within herself to be able to shoot that lightning without ever knowing that power really existed. Now, also to address the pink elephant in the room, since we're all going to be home, I do have a gaming channel, and I love streaming on there. The community is absolutely beautiful. It's like the purest form of the Theory channel here, Star Wars Theory here, of you guys that have come over there, and it's great. So if you want to check it out, the link's below. It's Theories Arcade, and I have a lot of fun time on there every day when we stream. So check it out since we're going to be home anyways, and wash your hands. All right, so getting on with the video. We're going to start at page 100, go to page 101, and then leak into page 102. I think actually we're going to cover all of page 102. So 100 to 102. It's a bit long, so bear with me, and you can always fast forward if you so wish. Probably like a minute, we'll get to the part where she actually shoots the lightning. So let's begin, a minute and a half. Kylo Ren yanked off his mask to get some fresh air. He was an idiot. His stomach roiled with this inevitable certainty as he gingerly stepped around the burning wreckage of his tie. She had run like a frightened womp rat, and in his blind rage he had succumbed to the temptation, not pausing to consider that maybe she had a plan. With this realization came another certainty, even more gut-wrenching. He was relieved he hadn't killed her. Snoke had always encouraged him to pursue his impulses. They were a shortcut to the dark side and unimaginable power. But his impulse to kill Rey had almost ruined everything he'd been planning. Kylo didn't know how to reconcile that. The path to the dark side lay in succumbing to one's desires, but his deepest desire, the thing he wanted most, would require planning and patience. The Emperor had figured out how to embrace a plan so long-suffering and painstakingly careful. It boggled the mind. And he did it without being tempted by the light, even a little. There was a way. He just had to learn it. Kylo sensed a tug in the Force as he stepped from billowing smoke into clear air. Far away, Rey stood in the sand, straining her arm reaching toward a flying transport. And she was succeeding in slowing it down. It didn't matter what or what was inside the transport that made Rey desperate to prevent its escape. He was not going to let her have it. He reached out, felt the massive machinery in his mind, yanked it towards himself. The transport almost jerked out of her grip, and she grasped at the familiar presence. Kylo, alive and well. Rey would not let him have Chewie. Chewie was hers. She strained to regain control, and she felt the ship lurch in her direction, but then it whipped right back. Rey tried to remember her training. Let the Force guide your actions, Leia would say. But thinking of Leia, her training, even for the briefest moments, made her lose concentration, and the ship listed again in Kylo's direction. So Rey bore down with all the strength of her being. Blood screamed in her ears, and her heart was a massive drum in her chest. She drew on her rage at Kylo, at the First Order, even at Unkor Plutt. She drew on her terror for Chewie's life, remembered what it felt like to watch Han Solo drop into the abyss at Starkiller Base. She drew on pain, too. The aching hollowness of an empty stomach, the bruised knuckles with no back to soothe them, the feel of grit in her molars after a windy day, the dagger-sharp silence of loneliness. Rey opened her mouth in a silent scream. Raw power burst from her fingertips, arced towards the freighter. It was blue lightning. Pure Force energy, brighter than a lightsaber, hotter than a sun. It wrapped its deadly, crooked fingers around the transport, which jerked sideways for the briefest instant and then exploded into a sickening fireball. I like how it said crooked fingers, kind of like Palpatine's, and it's talking about lightning. That was very well written. Rey stumbled back, gasping for air, as bits of wreckage rained down onto the desert plain. The transport, and everyone inside, reduced to nothingness. She stared down at her hand in horror, then at the bits of wreckage. Her stomach heaved, and finally she screamed, "Chewie!" as tears poured down her. Sorry if that was too loud. I'm in the scene. As tears poured down her cheeks, what had she done? A voice penetrated her haze of guilt madness. Ray! It was Poe calling to her. They're coming! He pointed toward the horizon, and she turned. Half a dozen first-order TIEs were quickly approaching. But Chewie, I'm sorry, Poe yelled, but we have to go. Now! His voice, along with Finn's rapid approach, convinced her feet to move. She would not lose any more friends. She hurried toward Finn, and together they ran for the ship. From a distance, Kylo Ren watched the freighter rise into the sky. Rey inside it. She had beaten him again, and yet he was filled with triumph. Man, did she really beat him? I thought he was toying with her. Come on, let's give Kylo 1 point once. He'd been right to push her. She had just demonstrated unbelievable, mind-blowing power. Dark power. Sith power. The scavenger was almost ready to turn, and when she did, they would both kill their light, embrace their darkness. Then the Star Destroyer fleet and the Sith throne would be theirs. And then it goes on to Chapter 8. So this is pretty sweet, man. It really goes into what I like about this. I'm going to get to the Plagueis novel in a bit, what Plagueis actually says about Force Lightning. What I like about this is that it goes into detail on her using the light side, trying to remember what Rey said, and then being like, you know what, this is just confusing me or just distracting me. I'm going to pull on my emotions, which is a very Sith thing to do, and uses that to fuel her, and unbeknownst to her, Force Lightning, which is hotter than a sun. It's interesting. Could melt the whole planet. So Darth Plagueis in the novel, in the Legends novel, it's not canon, explains Force Lightning to Sidious for the first Palpatine, young Palpatine, very young Palpatine for the first time. And he says this: a Jedi sufficiently strong... Oh, should I act it? All right. Hopefully it's not cringeworthy. A Jedi sufficiently strong in the Force can be trained to produce a facsimile, but not true Sith lightning, which, unabated, has the power not only to incapacitate or kill, but to physically transform the victim. Force lightning requires strength of a sort only a Sith can command, because we accept consequence and reject compassion. To do so requires a thirst for power that is not easily satisfied. The Force tries to resist the callings of ravenous spirits. Therefore, it must be broken and made a beast of burden. Not breast, sorry. It must be made to answer one's will, but the Force cannot be treated differentially. In order to summon and use Force lightning properly, you will someday have to be on the receiving end of its power as a means of taking the energy inside yourself. So interesting. So, a Jedi sufficiently strong in the Force can be trained to produce a facsimile, but not true Sith lightning, which unabated has the power not only to incapacitate or kill, but to physically transform the victim. Force lightning requires strength of a sort only a Sith can command, because we accept consequence. So it's interesting here. Was she doing that as a Jedi? If she was, then the freighter shouldn't really have exploded, because it wouldn't have been powerful enough. It wouldn't have been true Sith lightning, as Plagueis says. It has the power not only to kill, but to physically transform the victim, which was Sith lightning. So I'm thinking she really drew upon the Sith powers at this point, the powers that were within her in her bloodline. And if that's the case, then Rey is not really at least for that moment, she wasn't really a Jedi. She was definitely a Sith, because the Sith think inwards and they draw upon themselves and their emotions and their pain and everything that she was drawing upon. So it really shows that naturally she is more akin to using those abilities and powers, but it's what she does with those powers that defines her in the light or the dark, which is like what Dumbledore says to Harry, which paraphrasing, it is not our abilities who make us who we are, but our choices. I think that's what he said. So this is interesting. I like this excerpt from the novel. I think it's cool. But, dude, why does Kylo say that she beat him again? Come on. Come on, man. I thought he was toying with her the whole time. Oh, well. What can I say? Maybe Kylo will have his day one day. Oh, no, he's dead. Maybe he'll have his day one day in, like, some solo spin-off or something like that. Solo spin-off. I'm just all with the puns today without even knowing. All right, that's it for today's video. Stay safe, everyone. Check out the gaming channel if you haven't. And I'll see you in tomorrow's. Actually, I'll see you in tonight's podcast at 5 p.m. So in about 4 hours. Okay. Love you all, and may the force be with you. See you guys.